Life is chaotic. Nothing I need to tell you guys. Whether you're running a business, raising your family, just simply trying to stay afloat with what's going on. So navigating complex environments is filled with uncertainty. The question, right, isn't whether you're not going to face it, the chaos, is how effectively you're going to respond when it appears. And that's why I'm here today, is to kind of talk about navigating chaos and attacking your most important targets with purpose and clarity. And so during my years of flying the Gunship, being in the special operations community, missions over Iraq and Afghanistan, a lot like many of you, I learned that success in combat is usually the result of kind of four main principles. And the way I visualize it, and the way I kind of want you guys to visualize it today, is like a strongman competition. You guys ever seen those? It's usually like on TBS on a Saturday when you're vegging out, whatever, or Sunday morning. Like, I don't know why I'm watching this, but it's there. The guys are pulling trucks and doing those things. But you ever seen the one where they pick up those big rocks and they got to put like on the pedestal? It's called an Atlas stone, apparently. I had to look it up. But they put it on there and they get heavier and heavier as you go. That's kind of how I want you guys to visualize this. We've got 4 pedestals here, and we're going to put an Atlas stone on each one of them. And as we go, they get a little bit heavier and heavier. So I was actually going to probably ship out some Atlas stones, some pedestals. But I started doing the math on the shipping costs, and, it was definitely wasn't worth it. So that's how we're going to think about it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is defining what true targets actually are. Not just kind of surface-level goals, but meaningful objectives worth pursuing. We'll explore how to understand the operational environment around there, surrounding these targets, and identify obstacles and opportunity that others might miss out on. We're then going to talk about the second rock, is the reality that no one fights alone, right? You guys know this. I'm going to share some practical approaches of building a crew, aligning them towards a common goal, and then extending your impact by building powerful coalitions that go after your most important targets. The third thing we're going to talk about is resiliency, right? Life has setbacks, whether professionally and personally, and you're going to have those. So how to handle them and how to emerge stronger from them. And the final rock that we're going to put on that pedestal is adjusting your approach, right? When initial efforts don't produce the results you want, maintaining faith and courage, even when success is probably not possible or you don't think it is. And so I guess as you guys say in some of some of your worlds, truth in lending, right? Why am I here today? What's my target, right? My target is for you to leave here motivated, right? Motivated and going forward with some practical tools that you can use to attack your most important targets for there. And so for most of you, what I'm going to say is probably not new, right? Like, I don't have the answers to the test up here. Here's the secret answers, right? A lot of things I'm going to say for most of you, you probably have heard, except for the war stories. Those are pretty cool, right? And they're mostly true, mostly, okay? So, but for the other ones that may be new to some of this, I hope my experiences, both successes and failures, offer useful insights that can help you navigate your unique circumstances that you're going through. And though specific situations differ, the fundamental principles of successfully navigating chaos remain remarkably consistent. Whether you're flying a gunship overhead Afghanistan or attacking your important personal and professional goals. Right, so if I could get a member to come up here, we're going to lift up this first Atlas stone and put it up there. The first one we're talking about is identifying your target through the chaos, right? Knowing your mission, which is familiar to a lot of you that have done military time. So what is a target? So when I say that, most people think, what, like a bullseye, a tank, something you shoot at. But in the simplest terms, a target is anything you're trying to achieve, right? Pretty simple. It might be straightforward, like trying to get 8 hours of sleep at MilMoneyCon, which is probably not going to happen, right? Or, maybe more complex, like becoming self-employed within the next 3 months. These targets are unique to each of us and reflect where we are on our individual journeys. Your target might still be forming, just an idea or a dream taking shape that you're afraid to tell people about. And while goals differ, they all share one. They're targets. And targets are meant to be attacked with purpose. All right? So for most of my military career, get a slide going here. This is my office, right? The AC-130U gunship. I served part of a crew tasked with supporting special operation forces against our nation's enemies, right? So think Al-Qaeda, and the worst group of them all we would target, people driving in the left lane under the speed limit. I know some of you guys had a long night, so, but you know who you are, right? Don't do it. All right. So as a navigator and a pilot, and later a pilot aircraft commander, I worked with a 13-person crew that included sensor operators, flight engineers, fire control officers, gunners. And our mission was providing close air support to special operators conducting high-risk raids in enemy territory. Right, so think SWAT team style raids in enemy territory against the worst of the worst. And our target was straightforward, right? Bring every friendly home and allow them to return to their families. And to do that, we had to navigate the combat of chaos while providing precision fire support using our guns. And so you can see here, we got our 25 millimeter, 40 millimeter, and everybody's favorite, the crowd pleaser, the 105 howitzer. Right? So we use that to provide close air support for Navy SEAL teams, Green Berets, Army Rangers. And sometimes we had to provide danger close fires, which essentially meant it was so bad on the ground, right? It was so dire that we had to shoot so close to them that they were willing to accept that we killed them because it was that bad, right? So those types of missions, the types of things that the experience was drawn on. So we talked about identifying the targets, what they are. Let's talk about the chaos that actually surrounds those targets. So what exactly is chaos? If you Google it like I had to, right, it's going to tell you that it's disorder or confusion. And in scientific terms, it's unpredictability in complex systems. And that's what I want to focus on today. Our missions in Iraq and Afghanistan embody this perfectly. Unpredictable situations embedded with complex systems of culture, geography, language barriers, history, all the things, right, that influence our ability to attack our targets. In the military, most of you guys know, we call this the OE, or the operational environment, which are the factors that shape the nature of the surroundings and they affect what we're trying to actually accomplish. This meant understanding, who the good guys were, who the bad guys were, what success looked like, all the things that were in there. And in simpler terms, we needed to recognize what chaos we were flying into and what challenge it might throw at us. So let me kind of paint a picture of what this looks like on the daily basis for us. And a lot of you are here too, have been overseas or deployed. You know this, been air crew. But essentially, you're deployed. We would deploy as a hard crew, which meant that the 13 crew members stayed together. We didn't mix pilots. We didn't do things. We all stayed together as one family. And so usually, we flew during the nighttime. So we slept during the day. So you would wake up probably around like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You go check the board. We got anything on the books, to go support that night. And then, all know from deploying, it's gym tan laundry. I can go out. And then we go grab our chow bus. Oh, you got this? Okay. All right, can you guys hear me? All right, if I'm yelling too loud, just let me know. So we would grab a chow bus, go eat, just like everything downrange, come back, and then start our mission planning, And so during the time, especially, you guys probably remember the wars in Iraq. I mean, it was a breakneck pace. 2006, 2008, we were continually hitting 2 to 3 targets a night, sometimes up to 4. And so we'd come back, we have our mission, we do all of our mission planning, all of our preparation, all the things, right, of where are we going, who are we talking to, what's the fuel plan, how long can we be there? Then we brief it up, right? We talk about it, we're ready to go, all right, got our brief, everybody has their piece of the puzzle, the navigator, the fire control officer, all the things. And we're like, all right, you guys ready to go do this? Yeah, sounds good, I think we're prepared. And then the planner would literally walk in the back door and be like, oh, yeah, hey, just kidding. All that stuff, you just forget about it. You're going somewhere else. Here you go. And they just hand you a new mission. You're like, awesome. And at first, you get kind of angry, right? It's like I do all this work, just to get told we're not doing that. But you get kind of used to it. And then sometimes, you would get woken up like a firefighter. Literally like you're dead asleep in the day, right? And like they come banging your door and wake up and be like, hey, man, you got to go. And so in 2008, I think it was around August, that happened to me. Right? Sitting there dead asleep, doors start banging. Hey, you guys got to get up. And so we're like, okay, what's going on? Where are we going? Like, we don't know. Like, well, you're the one that woke me up. How's this work? Like, surely you have to know. Like, we don't know. All we know is that there's a bunch of French guys, a French company, they got overran. Right? And this is Afghanistan. They got overran. We know nothing. I'm like, okay, where are they at? We don't know. Just go. Like, okay, I guess we'll just start going. So you start running, doing things, because it takes time, right? You got to go get your gear, got to get everybody on board, we got to crank the aircraft, we got to get going. So, we got to handle step 1 as opposed to step 5 and 6. And so as we get going, things start coming in, into light. Like, hey, here's a grid, right? And a lot of times we prided ourselves in only having, all we needed was a call sign, who we're going to talk to, a frequency, how we're going to call them, and a grid, a location of where they're at. Everything else, we'll take care of it en route. And so that's what happens. We start running. We kind of know it's over here. And so we go overhead, and there's a couple fighters that have been there first, and we're like, man, well, surely these guys know, right? We're talking like, man, these guys know what's going on. And back then I was a navigator, so my role was literally to talk to other aircraft, talk to people on the ground. So I call them up, hey, what's going on? Sure, these guys know what's going on. No, we know nothing. Like, we can't get a hold of anybody. We're just overhead. We see people on the ground, but it's just, chaos. We're like, okay. So I get on the radio. I'm like, basically like, hey, anybody out there? Hey, hello. And some French guy comes on. It's like, hello? Sorry, my French accent. Anybody that's French or anything, I'm so sorry. My accent is just absolutely terrible. And so, he comes on. I'm like, hey, man, this is our call sign, who we are. We're an AC-130 gunship. We're overhead. Where are you? Because that's what he knew. We knew where you are. Everybody else is probably bad. And so, we go through. He's like, who are you? I'm like, we are an AC-130. Like, C-130? Like cargo? Like, no, guns. We have guns, And, oh, you're artillery. Like, no, we're AC-130. And just about then, there's a Green Beret team that's coming up the mountain, right? And they have their special, their Afghan counterparts, the special operation guys. And so I get to call those guys. I'm like, well, surely these dudes know. Right? Like they know this whole thing. Like we're the jerks in this situation. We're late to the game. And I call this guy. I'm like, hey, man, we're overhead. He's like, yeah, I just got woken up. I have no idea. Like, can you tell me where we're going? Like, we're literally just driving up a mountain, and getting thrown into this. And so, so long story short, we get those guys. We start linking them up with the French guys. They have no accountability with their personnel. They've got completely overrun. In the end, I think they lost 9. 9 got killed. They had 21 wounded. And around that time, we catch about 6 enemy fighters leaving the scene of it, and they're carrying a big old litter. And at that time, we really didn't know if they didn't have accountability with their people. So we didn't know if they actually we thought they had a French soldier on board, and they're going down the mountain with all their weapons, fleeing the scene of the crime. And we're trying to get accountability, and we tracked them. And finally, these guys, they stop, and they get kind of their base camp, and they flip over the blanket. And underneath it is a crew-served weapon. It's a machine gun, heavy machine gun, right, coming from the fight. And so we're like, okay, sweet. And, it's one of those things where the stars align. We're like, just then, the Green Berets had gotten up there. They got accountability. Like, hey, man, we got accountability. We know everybody. We got all the wounded. We're good to go. Those are definitely, bad guys. And then we get clearance to engage them. So we neutralize those guys. It's kind of the few times, in life and combat that you actually get to reach out and touch somebody that really, really deserves it. And so, I kind of know what you're thinking, right? Like, man, that's a really cool story. But I do financial planning. I'm not really planning on engaging the Taliban next week, which is fair enough, right? But here's kind of the connections. Regardless of what your targets are, they exist within an operational environment that's unpredictable and creates chaos around the goals you're pursuing. So for us, we are navigating, rules of engagement, language barriers, ever-changing combat situations while working to protect our friendlies. Our success didn't come from luck or raw talent, right? It came from doing our homework, right? Before we ever shot around, we did our homework. And we worked big picture to small details and understanding our operational environment, which allowed us to plan deliberately and deliver during preparation and then adapt to rapidly changing circumstances when it demanded it. And so I know it's a gunship, but the same approach works for you. Your operational environment may look a little bit different, but it's no less complex. Maybe you're dealing with economic uncertainty, right? Technological disruptions like AI reshaping your industry. Your chaos may be deeply personal. Health challenges or family responsibilities competing with your professional ambitions. Whatever form it takes, we all operate in a world characterized by what the military calls VUCA, right? A lot of you are familiar with that from probably your professional military education, right? Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. These forces constantly influence our ability to achieve our goals. And so the key takeaway, right, is straightforward and powerful. You must clearly identify your targets and thoroughly understand the operational environment surrounding it. And this understanding allows you to anticipate the chaos that you're inevitably going to prepare and see, right? So that's our first rock. Can I get a volunteer to come up here and do the second rock? Just kidding, right? I was going to hire a mime to do it, but I didn't. So we talked about identifying our target, operational environment around there, right, to anticipate that chaos. The next big rock that we're going to lift up there is building your crew, right? Then building a coalition of other teams and attacking your targets with purpose for there. And so everybody's probably heard the ancient African proverb, right? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Which encapsulates a profound truth of human potential. So no one truly exceeds in isolation. You guys know that. And not even what appears to be individual performers. And so you consider elite athletes like boxers, golfers, all the individuals. Each is surrounded by an intricate network of support. Trainers, coaches, medical professionals, advisors form an essential crew that extends far beyond the moment of performance. And so this collaborative approach transcends sports, right? Revealing a universal principle. Success is a collective endeavor. Whether you're navigating personal challenges, brainstorming business strategies in a mastermind group, or working within a professional team, your crew amplifies your strengths, mitigates your weaknesses, and propels you towards achievements that would be impossible otherwise. And so building such a crew is neither automatic nor effortless. It requires intentional cultivation, deliberate process of identifying, nurturing, and supporting the individuals who challenge, inspire, and uplift you. And so the most powerful crews are not merely assembled, they're carefully constructed continuously to develop a mutual trust. The crews we join or assemble, whether it's predetermined or self-selected, fundamentally shape our experiences. And the strategies for bringing people together towards a common goal are vast in human experience. So again, building crews, I don't pretend to have all the answers, right? But I'm going to talk about 3 critical considerations that I believe are important to do it and are the backbone for exceptional crew dynamics. And so hopefully you can use some of these 3 things building your crews. And so the first one is communication, right? It's kind of like flexibility. It's the catch-all, right? Communication, flexibility. Communication, it stands as the primary lifeblood of any successful crew in a high-stakes environment like combat. And it must be adaptive, shifting to meet the unique requirements of team and individuals within it. It requires active listening, courage to speak openly, and the wisdom to recognize what's unsaid can be just as powerful as what's unspoken. And so in Gunships, communication was one of our biggest strengths, right? It was also one of our biggest weaknesses. So I talked about we had 13, sometimes 14 crew members on board. We had 5 different external radios, so 5 different telephones. We had 5 different internal nets of who you're talking to, right? Which was a nightmare in crew resource management of getting things done. And for us to actually get around out of the aircraft, everybody had to agree, right? Everybody had to agree. Everybody's got to flip a switch and say, yes, we're going to put one out. And so we all had different levels of situational awareness. So having open communication was so important because at times, it's like I give the example, it's like we have a group puzzle and everybody has their pieces. And at any moment, you're called on to put your piece down. And so if you don't have that communication, it's not going to happen, and having that shared consciousness with it. The biggest point for communication is empowering even the quietest members to speak up and creating an environment that will allow it. And we talked about it in Gunships all the time. We have numerous examples. It was always probably the 18-year-old brand new gunner on their first deployment that was the one that saved us. You know, we're all dialed in the fight, you know, about to go hot, about to go shoot, you know, fangs out, ready to go, looking through our soda straws of sensors, you know, and all of a sudden from the back it's like, hey, you guys tracking those helos that are coming through the orbit? No, thank you, you know. And it was because we allowed them, we empowered them to talk and speak, that they were able to do that. You know, we get made fun of them later on, right, obviously, because they're new guys. But at the moment, we empowered them to speak up even when they were wrong, right? Like, hey, good job speaking up. You're completely wrong. That's the worst thing I've ever heard, but I'm so proud of you for having the guts to do it. But you got to have approachability for that. The second one is conflict resolution. So the best teams have got to fight. You have got to fight, right? Which is counter to kind of what we think of, that, conflict is bad, I want to get away from it. You got to do it. And so I learned, you know, Lacey mentioned, I taught SOS for a year, right, when I was at Air Unit Cell. So essentially that's like the commander, that's like the captain's course for leadership. You know, where individually, you know, they teach them about critical thinking, foreign policy, leadership, all the great things. And in that, they compete as flights. Right, so they're all together doing, you know, these little things. They got to run around, solve a puzzle, and the fastest one to do it, you know, they win. All kinds of good stuff. And so as I'm going through my first class, I have an instructor. This guy named Jedi, they called him. I think he was like a 19-year, 03, you know, higher tenure, you know, been there like 15 years teaching. I mean, knew everything, smart as can be. And so what we would do, he'd tell you, is that, hey, you know, he's like, how are you going to run it? You know, because they have to do this event where they got to run around, solve puzzles, and there's all these critical clues, right? And there's like probably 1 or 2 clues that are like big deals.
If you don't have that one, it's like, man, you're not going to do it because you have to hit these checkpoints and solve a riddle. If anybody hasn't been to SOS yet, I'm sorry I'm ruining it for you. But they got to basically solve this riddle at the end of it. And so he's like, hey, how you gonna do this? Like, well, I'm gonna line them up and I'll just hand out the pieces and then say go, see what happens. He's like, well, that's one way to do it. I'm like, okay, well, how do you do it? He's like, what I like to do is I like to give that critical clue to Mr. or Mrs. Crickets. I was like, Mr. Crickets, Mrs. Crickets. He's like, yeah. He's like, every flight, there's somebody in there that's completely introverted, just very quiet, and gets talked over by the fighter pilots. Sorry, fighter pilots. That they don't too. He's like, I like to hand that clue to that person. And so we would do that, and sure as can be, as soon as we did it, what would happen, right? The pilots, what are they going to do? Establish dominance, right? This is what we're doing, just start running, have no idea what they're doing. And, Mr. or Mrs. Cricket's eyes are like this big, and we just watch it. It's awesome. You're like, man, it's like reality TV, And they start charging and running, and they don't ask for it. And they eventually get about halfway through, 3/4, and someone notice, oh, hey, what clue do you got? Oh, I got this. Like, oh my, where was this? You had this the entire time? And they would fight, and they would have it out and have a meltdown, right? And it was awesome. But those flights that did that performed the best, right? Because it's not a matter if it's going to happen, it's just win, right? The foreman, Norman Storman, y'all know it, performing, it's real. And I don't care who you are or what way of life is, it's going to happen. And if you don't have it, it's going to happen at the worst times, when all the pressure's on you, right? The critical moments of what it is. I saw it in gunships, right? We had crews have complete meltdowns because they had all this underlying conflict they never addressed. So that's the second point for you. You got to address it. You got to do it. And the third one is fun and connection. You got to have that. You got to have that time. And the best memories I have flying gunships, right, that brought us all together was not shooting bad guys, right? It wasn't, that was cool too, right? I like that. But it was the times, similar probably your guys' experience, of having breakfast afterwards as a crew and talking about things. And one of our favorite things was this guy here. They called it the green machine, right? And so I think this thing was acquired at some point in the beginning of the Afghan war for our squadron, and it randomly would make its way to wherever we were, right? And the senior crew, who's been there downrange the longest during the deployment, got the green machine as their crew bus. That was our ride. And we loved it, right? And so the gunners, what they did, because they're gunners, right? The spray nozzles for the windshield wipers. We didn't have windshield wiper fluids. You just poured water in there because, we're deployed, right? We're in Iraq or Afghanistan. They turned the nozzle on the right side to the right, towards the door. And so every time we'd leave, from doing a mission, we put our gear up, we're all whooped, the sun's coming up, we'd make our way back to our compound. And a lot of the places we were at, like you guys know, had public transportation. And there's bus stoppers. We call them day walkers. All the day walkers. No offense, you guys are day walkers, right? Day walkers are up, drinking coffee, ready to get the bus to go to chow. And the bus looked just like one of the public transportation buses. And I was just a passenger. It was not my idea, right? But I swear, right? You'd be in the back, and they would roll up to one of these bus stops and start slowing down, and people were like, "Oh, okay, here we go. Here it comes." And then they would hit the windshield wiper fluid and just do a complete drive-by and spray, and then mini 06 E9, just running down, chasing us down, yelling at us, and we'd finally probably get tackled down for it. But those are the memories that I remember the most, and those are the things similar to your life that bring your teams together. So building your crew, those are the most important parts of it. So we talked about once you built your team, we've nurtured it, right? Communication, conflict, fun and connection. The next part is time to use meta leadership to build a coalition of other crews and attack together. And so you could complete a whole master's degree on meta leadership, right? The list is long and wide, but it's simple. Meta leadership is how you influence and unite people and organizations that you don't have direct control over. It's about finding common ground with others who share our goals, even though they're not on the same team. So think about kind of everyday situations where this applies. Businesses from different industries working together on a shared problem. Entrepreneurs with different products that share a shared vision. In gunships, we never attacked alone. We always had a ground assault force, other aircraft, intel people. Every mission was a coordinated effort involving multiple teams. And this is kind of the approach that you guys heard the book Team of Teams by General Stanley McChrystal, right? It's his approach where a team of teams, where it shows how interconnected groups can thrive in the chaos and unpredictability of modern challenges, like the battlefields in Iraq, right? We fought Al-Qaeda. And the real power isn't just having multiple teams, like, yeah, I got 1,000 friends. It's creating what he kind of called a shared consciousness, which means everybody, regardless of their specific role, understands the bigger picture and the why behind the mission and how their pieces fit into the larger puzzle. And when everybody's on the same page, what it allows you to do is to make smart decisions on the fly and able to counterpunch when chaos ensues from that unpredictability. So it's not just about military things. It's directly applicable to any complex environment where conditions change rapidly. When your teams truly understand the overall mission, the role within it, they can respond immediately to new information and changing circumstances or those obstacles, that chaos that ensues. And so these principles are powerful tools for navigating everyday life. So look around. Who is on your personal and professional crews? Who makes up your core crew? Maybe it's family members, provide unconditional support, or friends who offer honest feedback. Just like in combat, your personal crew needs clear communication, healthy ways to adjust, and fun and connection to bind them. Then consider your extended coalition, mentors, community groups, professional networks you span your reach and impact for. So whether you're growing a business, changing careers, no significant goal is accomplished alone. The chaos might look different from what we saw in Gunships, but the fundamental approach is the same. Identify your crew, nurture those relationships with intention, then build bridges to other teams for those shared objectives, right? So that's the second Atlas rock, right? So still no volunteers to do the third one? All right, I guess I'll do it myself here. We'll pick up the third rock, right, which is resiliency through adversity, right? Everybody loves that term too, right? But that's the reality. Life is hard, and you're going to have adversity through it. Every single person in this room has faced challenges that's tested their limits and forced them to dig deeper. These challenges come in all shapes and sizes, from everyday setbacks to life-altering events that shake your very foundation. Right now, as I'm speaking, some of you are silently battling significant struggles. Maybe it's invisible weight of depression or anxiety. Perhaps it's the lingering effects of PTSD, triggering you least expect it. For others, it might be physical challenges, chronic pain that never fully subsides, disabilities that require daily adaptation, or health conditions that demand constant management. Beyond the personal backgrounds, many of you face external pressures as well that test your daily resilience. Financial strains, dynamics that drain your emotional nerves. These struggles especially hit hard in our community of the military, where service members, spouses, veterans face unique pressures that civilians never fully understand. Or the deployments, all the things that we know about are challenges. And so what matters is not that you're going to have adversity, right? Because we all have it, right? Everybody's grown here. It's just a matter of when it's going to happen and how bad it's going to get. And so to do that, you guys remember the old slides, the pillars of resiliency, right? I know there's different ones. There's like 4 pillars, 5 pillars. The stool, right? If one of your legs of stool is broken, you're not going to be there. And so we talk about that, the physical, taking care of yourself, physical activity, nutrition, the mental part, right? Of being resilient, of knowing what you can control and can't control. Social, having a network that supports you. Or the spiritual of having faith in something, right, greater than yourself when logic really doesn't meet the demand. And so I'll tell you a story about me and my struggle. So slide. Here's a picture. There's a picture. So that's me in 2013 June. I just came back from I think my 8th deployment to Afghanistan as co-pilot. And so 5 months later in that year, December, one morning I wake up to go change my son's diaper, all right? And my arm starts swelling. And I'm like, man, that's weird. And I'm like, man, maybe I slept on it wrong. Because I got neck issues, right, like everybody. I probably slept on it wrong. My arm was pumped. Like I've been lifting weights, but not. Blood was going in, blood's going in, going out, And of course, like any good, airman, I'm like, whatever, I'll be all right. Rub some dirt on it, Because I had a sim that night. I had a Friday night simulator. Like, who schedules that, right? I'm like, I can't call and stick for this thing, So I'm like, blowing it off. And of course, my wife, Chrissy, we go get it looked at. I'm like, whatever. So long story short, I'm like, all right, I'll go in there, I'll get it looked at. And we had flight doctors in our squadron, which was really nice. And so I was like, we're having a commander's call around 2 or 3. I'll go in there. I'll talk to the flight docs. It's probably some weird. I probably pulled, my muscle because I know best. And, I'll get it looked at. So I go in there. And I'm like, hey, I got this thing going on. It's probably nothing, but I got to get looked at. she's like looking at me, like touching it. She's like, yeah. She's like, you need to go to the ER, like now, and don't drive. I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, do not drive. She's like, have your wife come pick you up. I'm like, man, this is a real hassle, And so I'm like, all right, whatever, Chrissy, she wants me to go. So I go over there. And there's this old PA, right, physician assistant at Eglin Air Force Base. And he goes there. I'm like, hey, man, I got this thing going on. It's like, all right. So I do an ultrasound. And they're like, hey, you have a clot in your jugular vein. Not your artery, but your jugular vein. And I'm like, well, first thing, I'm never flying again. Like, not that I could die or like whatever, have a stroke. So I'm never flying again. There's pilots in here. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Like, I'm never flying again. Like, it's a good run. He's like, hey, while we're here, let's just do a chest X-ray. I'm like, okay. And they're working a plan to move me, to get me on blood thinners, all this stuff. And so I go do the X-ray, come back. He's like, hey, man, he's like, we got it here. It's open. Let's just do a CT. Okay. Go do that. Go do a CT, come back. And, sitting there. My wife's there. And the flight docs have come over, too, with our squadron commander. And he comes in. He's like, hey, man, he's like, you have a massive tumor in your chest. And I'm like, no way. No way. No way. I mean, what does this dude know? He's some PA, I'm a pilot. This dude, you tell him I'm a pilot? I know things, I may have been just a little bit of denial, just a hair. I'm like, no way. And I'm like looking over because I trust our flight docs. I'm like, does this dude know what he's talking about? And they're like, yeah. And I wish I had the picture to show you, right? I mean, I started laughing, probably a reaction, right? Not right, but I started laughing hysterically because they show me this X-ray, and it's literally like I swallowed a grapefruit. I mean, completely seeing eye dog, like, well, there's your problem, And so I'm like, oh man, like, okay, well, this is significant. So I need a moment, if you don't mind, And so right then, obviously it's probably the scariest part. And go back a little bit further. The first thing that popped in my mind was in 2008, the whole French story I told you guys about, my last deployment. My roommate, the aircraft commander, and I, we were working out together. We were clanging and banging, getting strong. And working out towards our deployment, about a week and a half till we left, he's like, man, I pulled something in my neck. And I'm like, suck it up. Obviously, that's what we do. Like, all right, tough. Suck it. He's like, no, man, like, for real. I'm like, okay, well, don't hurt yourself, He's like, yeah, man, my neck, I'll go, but it's just kind of weird. I'm like, all right, no biggie. So he goes back home, and they find out he has brain cancer. Yeah, it's completely wrapped around a spinal cord. They tried cutting it out, and they can't get it, right? He's dead in 8 months. And so fast forward to, I get told I have a massive tumor in my chest. I'm like, man, I don't know how bad it's going to be, whatever it is. I think about that. And so they get me there. They transfer me over to Sacred Heart, which is probably like the lowest point in the story, right? It's kind of the whole pity party, I allegedly may have cried. I can't confirm or deny that. I don't want to talk about it, but I rode in an ambulance all the way to Sacred Heart from Eglin, which is like, almost like an hour. Lowest point in my life. I'm still in my flight suit. Woke up that morning, tough guy, about to go fly to, I have cancer now. And so at that point, it was like, hey, it's on, right? Like, suck it up, We had that little moment, and that little person on your shoulder starts telling you, like, all right, well, now you got a new mission, right? Let's get after this. So we get there, and, they talk like, hey, man, you got cancer. Like, I don't tell you. We're going to do a biopsy, and then it takes like 4 or 5 days to get identified. It's like, it's probably going to be these three. One, it's going to be high-intensity chemo. This one is going to be chemo with radiation. And then the third one is they're going to send you to MD Anderson. They're going to crack your chest. They're going to cut it out and do chemo and radiation. And I'm like, I don't want that one. Like if there's any hope, it's not that one. And so they come back. They got my stuff under order. I start going home. And they're literally calling me as I go over the bridge. We're going home. I'm not driving, obviously. He's like, hey, man, you got, primary mediastinal, large B-cell lymphoma, whatever it is, right? Didn't matter to me. I was like, cool. I was like, first, can you text that to me? Because all my family's going to be asking me what it is, and I'm not going to be able to tell them, right? And my wife, right? And the second one was like, is this the crack your chest open kind of cancer? Or is this? It's like, no, it's a high-intensity chemo one. So, like, okay, we got one on the board. We got to win there. So I ended up doing about 6 rounds of intense chemo, and going for 5 days at a time, get bags, do all that stuff. So I did 6 rounds. They wanted me to do 2 more. Luckily, my wife, who is an absolute expert, who made it her target in life, understood that she became literally an expert on all these studies of that, challenged the doctors and made it so that I didn't have to do any more chemo. And so, the end of it was kind of uneventful. I was out fishing with my brother-in-law on the Okaloosa Pier, and I get a phone call, and it's like, oh, yeah, man, they say you don't need to do more chemo. all right. Like, like, yeah, you're in remission. Well, all right, no ringing the bell, no thing. Like, call people like, I guess I'm good, And so I tell you the story, right, because some of the big key takeaways from it we already talked about. Identifying your target, whether that was me or my wife, and going through the struggle that I went through. We had all the things. My wife is really, Chrissy is the leader of the story, right? As a military spouse, she was prepared, for all the deployments. Our son had medical issues when he was born. But she made it her target to identify that, the target, understand an operational environment, which was every study under the sun for cancer. And then we built our crew, which was our immediate family, my family, the doctors, all those things to attack it. And guess what? We had conflict too, And my family probably remembers this. My wife literally reading my oncologist the riot act. I'm like, no, you're wrong. The study you're saying is not correct. He's like, and literally he came back and was like, hey, you're actually right. So she saved me from doing radiation, from doing 2 more rounds of chemo because of that. And so I tell you that because it's not a matter of if, it's when. And so what I want you also to take away is what I'm grateful for was that I started from a position of power, right? And they told me that the entire time is that you're lucky that you're starting with strong pillars. I mean, I was working out, I was probably benching 500, at least. And, I said they're mostly true. So I started from a position of power, so I was able to take, a lot. And so I was grateful it wasn't my kids, it wasn't my wife, it wasn't my parents, it was me. And so it's not a matter of if it's going to happen to you, it's just when, right? And so the fourth thing, the last kind of big rock that we're going to talk about is adjusting your fire to hit your target. And so life presents us with an unavoidable truth. Life is hard no matter what. And you guys know this. So the real choice isn't between hard and easy. It's deciding which type of hard you're willing to accept. Will you embrace the difficulty of pursuing meaningful goals with all the adjustments and persistence they require? Or will you settle for the quiet hardship of mediocrity, carrying the heavy burden of what could have been throughout your life? One hard is temporary and leads to growth. The other is permanent and leads to regret. And here's the truth about achieving anything meaningful. It's rarely a clean one-shot success. Life isn't a precision-guided missile that flies perfectly from launch to impact. It's more like operating a gunship in a firefight. It's messy, it's dynamic, and requiring constant adjustments. In the gunship, we knew our first round would almost never hit the bullseye, right? The real skill wasn't in perfect initial aim, but quickly assessing where the rounds landed, making rapid corrections, and continuing to fire until we're on target. And we called this technique two-shotting. And so this two-shot principle applies perfectly to life's most worthwhile pursuits. You want financial freedom? Well, expect detours, setbacks, right, as you find a path that works. You're trying to build a business? Well, you're going to have to adjust until you find out what your customers actually want. You want to get healthy, right, lose weight, all the things involved with that. You're going to have to make adjustments till you find out what works for you and what your body responds to. The targets worth hitting, raising resilient children, building meaningful relationships, creating something innovative, all require this willingness to adjust fire. What separates those who eventually succeed from those who don't isn't talent or luck, it's persistence in making these adjustments. The most valuable achievements come with built-in resistance precisely because they're worth having. If reaching your goals is easy and straightforward, the accomplishment will be commonplace and the journey far less valuable. Or as I like to say, if it was easy, man, everybody would be doing it. The willingness to adjust, adapt, and keep firing when others would give up is what ultimately allows you to hit the targets that most people dream about. This journey requires two powerful forces that must work in tandem: faith and courage. Faith isn't just a spiritual concept. It's the deep-seated belief that your target is worth hitting and that you have what it takes to get there, even when evidence seems scarce. It's continuing to move forward when logic and circumstance suggest surrender. Courage is a daily decision to face uncertainty, to make one more adjustment, to fire one more shot when everything in you wants to retreat to safety. The most meaningful targets in life will test both faith and courage. There will be moments when success seems impossible, when adjustments aren't working, when others suggest you change course entirely. These moments aren't a sign of failure. They're the necessary threshold that separate those who achieve extraordinary things from those who settle. Your capacity to maintain faith in your mission and summon the courage to keep adjusting fire, especially when it seems futile, is often the final determining factor in whether you ultimately hit your target. And so I like to share a quote, right, that kind of talks about this persistence, right? And it's from, you guys read the book Atomic Habits? Awesome book. Highly recommend it. And it's that stonecutter quote. And the San Antonio Spurs, right here in town, right across the street, they had it in their locker room that addresses persistence. And so when nothing seems to help, I go and look at the stonecutter, hammering away at his rock, perhaps 100 times without as much as a crack showing in it. Yet at the 101st blow, it'll split in two. And I know it's not that blow that did it, but all that had gone before that, right? And which talks about the persistence in life of having faith in what you're doing, right? And not getting that instant gratification, which is completely counter what our culture is, but believing in process and identity rather than immediate effects. And so, as I kind of conclude here, the story never ends, right? We have our 4 rocks we talked about. In life, there's no movie rolling credits, right? There's no scenes like the end of Top Gun with our high five and, well, maybe in Gunships, we had a couple of those high five. They look pretty cool, right? Nobody rides off in the sunset. Life's journey continues and is bringing with it the full spectrum of experiences, achievements and failures, celebrations and heartbreaks. The world you inhabit is unpredictable, creating chaos in every facet of your life. And it's only intensifying as the rate of change accelerates. Emerging technologies like AI, machine learning, robotics are fundamentally reshaping our human existence. Sure, during our toughest days, it seems appealing to live small, to retreat into a simple existence. But that's not what you were put on earth to do. You are meant to attack life with purpose. To do this effectively, you must get crystal clear on your professional and personal targets by doing your homework on the operational environment surrounding them. You need to build your crew and nurture it with the key factors we discuss: open communication, conflict resolution, fun, and connection. You must start from a position of strength with solid pillars of resiliency, ready for when adversity strikes and shakes your very foundation. And you have to keep adjusting fire through persistence, faith in your cause, and the courage to leave it all on the field. And as I close, I want to challenge this community to make the most of your time here at MilMoneyCon 25. Not by sitting on the sidelines waiting for an invitation to dance, but by actively connecting and building your crew and coalition to attack the targets that are important in your life. I'd like to leave you here as a quote from Herb Kelleher, the founder of Southwest Airlines, right here in Texas. If you're crazy enough to do what you love for a living, then you're bound to create a life that matters. Thank you.